Over on Jaguar Gator 7, not only do we have an all-new episode of Dumb Decisions out, but we have a new video where we talk about a controversy that happened at the 1981 World Series. Click the card in the upper right corner to watch. And now, on with our feature presentation. A long time ago, and I truly mean a long time ago, as in one of the first of over 950 history videos I made for this channel back in the fall of 2019, I made a video about the controversy that happened at Super Bowl VIII involving the Minnesota Vikings. You can learn more about that mess by clicking the card in the upper right corner. However, in short, at Super Bowl VIII, the Minnesota Vikings lost to the Miami Dolphins by a final score of 24-7, in a game that never felt even the slightest bit competitive. And while there were many reasons why the Vikings lost this battle and did not look prepared to play in this game, one of the reasons was because of a controversy that happened before the game, as the Vikings practiced in rundown high school facilities that were nowhere near the team hotel. The NFL put the Vikings in absolutely horrible accommodations, and Houston was ill-equipped and ill-prepared to host the big game, screwing over the Vikings in the process. However, this was not the only major controversy from the 1973 NFL playoffs. In fact, you might be wondering how the Vikings even made it to the Super Bowl in the first place. And that is because, just like every other team before them and after them, they had to win in the NFC Championship. Although this conference championship game was marked by a bizarre controversy off the field that, even though it had no impact on the game whatsoever, ticked off the Cowboys and ticked off the NFL in a big way, to the point that, in some circles, it was considered to be illegal. The 1973 season was a bizarre one from a broadcasting perspective, because no one really knew the rules, and everyone was kind of just making things up as they went along. And this is a prime example of that. Because nearly half a century later, this is the story behind what might just be the strangest controversy in the history of the NFC Championship game. Before I talk about the actual incident in question, and why the Cowboys and the NFL were so angry about this, we need some context to understand the importance of this game, as well as how it was going, just to give some sort of a frame of reference. It's December 30th, 1973, and it's the NFC Championship down in Texas Stadium between the Minnesota Vikings and the Dallas Cowboys. The stakes for this one are relatively simple. The winner moves on to play in Houston at Super Bowl VIII against whoever wins the AFC Championship later in the day between the Oakland Raiders and the Miami Dolphins, and the loser goes home, with their season coming up one game short of football's biggest stage. For these two teams, two of the powerhouses of the NFC for years, there was clearly a ton on the line. If Minnesota won, they would go to their second Super Bowl, looking to win their first. And if Dallas won, they would be going to their third Super Bowl in 4 years. It was a battle between two of the top teams in the conference, with the 10-4 Cowboys boasting the second best offense in the NFC and the second best point differential, and the 12-2 Vikings boasting the best defense in the NFC with just 168 points allowed, or 12 points per game, and the third best point differential in the NFC. And before anyone asks, the reason that this game was held in Dallas and not Minnesota, despite the fact that the Vikings had a better record, was because of an absolutely dumb rule back in the first half of the 70s, where the site of the conference championship was predetermined. It's the same rule that, the year before, forced the undefeated Miami Dolphins to play the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road at Three Rivers Stadium in the AFC Championship. Just wanted to clear that up before going any further, even though that's not the main point of this video. However, on the field, the Vikings showed why they were the better team, as they thoroughly outclassed Tom Landry and the Cowboys en route to their second Super Bowl appearance in the last 5 years. When all was said and done, the Vikings won this one relatively easily, as thanks to their dominant defense, they prevailed by a final score of 27-10, with Dallas's lone touchdown coming on a punt return by Golden Richards. So the defense didn't allow the vaunted Cowboys offense to get into the end zone once. Minnesota more than doubled Dallas's first down numbers, winning that battle 20-9. The Vikings ran right over the Cowboys all day long, running for 203 yards and a touchdown on 4.3 yards per carry, and double the Cowboys' total yardage, outgaining them 306 to 153 while forcing 6 turnovers in the process. And Roger Staubach had no answers against the Purple People Eaters, as Staubach played one of the worst games of his career, especially in the second half. Not only did the Cowboys finish the game with just 63 net passing yards, but Staubach went 10 for 21, completing less than 50% of his passes while taking 3 sacks, throwing no touchdowns, and throwing 4 interceptions, coming out to a passer rating of 19.8, which is worse than if he did nothing but spiked the ball into the ground on every single play. On offense and on defense, the Vikings thoroughly dominated in every way, as touchdowns by Chuck Foreman, John Gilliam, and Bobby Bryant on a pick 6, plus 2 field goals by Fred Cox, helped propel the Vikings to the NFC title. But that wasn't the only reason that the Cowboys were upset. They were upset because this game was being shown on television. You see, in 1973, a rule was put into play following a ton of lobbying in Congress that required every NFL game to be shown in the home market of that team, provided that the game was sold out at least 72 hours beforehand. Prior to 1973, or really, prior to Super Bowl VII, all home games were blacked out no matter what, meaning that even if this game in Dallas was sold out, it would not be allowed to be televised in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And as we know, Cowboys president Tex Schramm is adamant about the fact that this new blackout rule was bad for the sport, because if a game was on TV, it meant less people would show up to the game, thereby hurting the team's revenue, since people will choose to watch at home with friends versus paying money for parking, food, and merchandise. If you want to learn more about that, and an incident that happened during the 1976 season involving that, click the card in the upper right corner, because that video might make a heck of a lot more sense after this one to understand the distrust that Schramm had with people buying tickets at the last minute to the game. Now, despite the fact that this was the NFC Championship, and you would think that it would be sold out in a heartbeat, that wasn't quite the case for some reason. Maybe it was playoff fatigue, seeing as the Cowboys had been in the playoffs every year since 1966, which was the longest active streak in the NFL. Maybe it was the bystander effect, as in, I'm not going to buy the tickets because I'm going to watch it on TV, because I'm sure other people will buy the tickets. Maybe it was the fact that there was a gas crisis going on in 1973, with the oil crisis forcing the price of gas to go up 43% over the course of 1 year, to the point where the government was asking people not to put up Christmas lights. This meant that money was tight, or that people didn't want to have to drive all the way out to Irving, since this was not a downtown stadium, and instead was in the middle of nowhere. Maybe it was the fact that the Cowboys hosted a playoff game last week, and the Cotton Bowl was coming up in 2 days on January 1st, so the entertainment dollar was being stretched pretty thin with football as it was. Maybe it was the fact that people blew their money on Christmas gifts and needed to budget accordingly. Maybe it was a combination of all these things. Whatever the case, this conference championship was not selling out, with it looking incredibly unlikely that prior to the 72-hour deadline, this game would be filled to capacity. Over 18,000 tickets still remained on Wednesday, and while ticket sales usually increase exponentially as we draw closer to game time, they don't increase by that much. However, things got interesting when, thanks in part to the largest single day of ticket sales in franchise history, the blackout getting lifted was a possibility. It went from no shot in the world to, well, it might happen, as roughly 14,000 tickets were sold that Wednesday. The bad news was that there were still 5,000 tickets or so that needed to be sold by noon on Thursday for the blackout to be lifted. The good news, though, was that this was possible. One Cowboys spokesman said on the possibility that this game would be sold out was that it was touch and go. And sure enough, even though there were 1,400 tickets left, just moments before the blackout deadline was set to take effect, the game was sold out when a local discount store came in and bought the remaining tickets. The store was preparing to buy up to 2,000 tickets at face value to make sure that the game would be seen locally, and that every Cowboys fan across the country could see their team try and win the NFC Championship against Minnesota. They were prepared to spend $24,000 to make it happen, since each ticket was $12, and in the end, they spent $16,800 to lift the blackout. Now, TechStram blasted the company for then taking out an ad praising themselves, saying that the game was going to be televised because of them, which seems like an odd strategy by Shram to attack people buying your tickets and spending money. But regardless, thanks to a local discount store, the game was sold out and could be shown on CBS. And you'd think that would be the end of this story, right? I mean, stores buying up tickets to prevent a blackout is nothing unusual, and it's happened before. Heck, earlier in the season, when the Cowboys played the Vikings, the game was televised only because a local furniture store bought the final 100 tickets. And I've talked about similar things like this on the channel before. If you want to learn more about the time that Burger King bought remaining tickets to a Vikings playoff game, click the card in the upper right corner. But it's what the discount store did with these 1,400 tickets afterwards that had everyone up in arms. Because somehow, the discount store found a loophole in the blackout rule that clearly went against the spirit of the law. The discount store gave some of these tickets to an orphanage, which wasn't a problem. The problem was that with the bulk of the tickets, they then put them up on sale for $10 a piece, as in, below face value. The strategy on the part of the discount store seemed absolutely genius. First, they take a $16,800 hit by buying the remaining tickets. Then, they generate a ton of good PR by getting their name out there and saying that they're responsible for the game being shown on TV. Then, you have to buy the tickets directly through the department store, but they're discounted. However, when you go to the store, maybe you see something you like and want to buy that on top of the ticket. Or now that the game is on TV, maybe you'll have people over and you need some last-minute cookware or furniture or something along those lines. So you go to the discount store when you otherwise wouldn't have, because there was no need before, since you can't have a watch party with friends and family if there's nothing to watch. You have to spend money to make money, and the discount store stood to make a ton off of this strategy, from PR, to people directly buying tickets from them, to people going to the store and buying their items, either directly or indirectly, because of the Cowboys now being on TV. Stores had bought tickets before to ensure a blackout would be lifted, and then they resold those tickets. But this was the first time that a store did this and sold the tickets below face value. And because of this, not only did the store stand to make money, but the Cowboys stood to lose some money, since you would have a dilemma with the 1,400 tickets given to the department store. Either number one, those tickets wouldn't be resold, and you would have a bunch of no-shows, thereby reducing the revenue you make from parking and concessions, or number two, the tickets would be resold. But instead of making a $12 purchase to the Cowboys, you're making a purchase greater than $12 to the discount store, since it's likely that you'll buy a ticket and also find something at the store that you could use, meaning you now have less money to spend at the Cowboys game. Or you spend gas money going to the discount store and now have less money to spend at the Cowboys game because of that. I should also note that even though the game wouldn't have been sold out yet, that doesn't mean that it wouldn't eventually be sold out. The previous week, when the Cowboys played the Rams in the divisional round, even though the game was blacked out because they couldn't meet the 72-hour deadline, it was still sold out by kickoff. This means that, potentially, instead of having 1,400 extra people in the stands and less no-shows, since you can't watch the game at home, you've got either 1,400 empty seats if the discount store can't sell the tickets, more empty seats from people who will just watch at home, or people who now believe that the true value of a Cowboys ticket isn't $12, but rather is $10, and they won't go above that price point from now on. All of these things are not good for Dallas at all, either short-term or long-term. Basically, the discount store completely cheated the system to ensure that this game would be televised. And this was bad for the NFL and the Cowboys, because they were worried about the precedent that this could set. Why buy tickets from the team? Why buy tickets at face value? Just wait for the discount store to bail the team out, and then buy them for less than what they're worth. Even today, if you have the option of buying a ticket for $200 or a ticket for $150, and it's the same seat, which one are you picking? You're picking the second one. This, in the eyes of the NFL and the Cowboys, was a gimmick, in the same light as dollar beers. Why will people come to the bar on other nights where you're not selling it at a discount when they know they can just get it at a discount later on, and when that's the value you put on the product? And the league and the team were so furious about this that they were going to bring the issue to Congress and the Federal Communications Commission, since this was not in the spirit of the blackout law at all. Said Jim Kenzel, the executive director of the NFL, on this controversy, "It's discouraging. It's a cheapening of our product. Even back in the days when we were struggling, when Burt Bell was our commissioner, we never sold discount tickets. We never went in for cheap promotional gimmicks. We've always sold our tickets at full price. The spirit of the blackout law in no way contemplated a situation like this." He then added, "We had no objection to selling them to the store, or trying to cooperate with the law, but we weren't informed that the store planned to sell them at a discount rate. It's something of serious concern to us. We've built this up over the years, and we're not sure what it could mean for the future." Kenzel also said that the league would have had serious reservations and probably would not have allowed the tickets to be sold if he knew that they were just going to be resold and discounted. But just like that, the NFC Championship, under the strangest of circumstances, was going to be televised. On one hand, the concerns of the Cowboys and the NFL, especially long-term, were incredibly valid. The last thing you want is a resale market where the tickets are being sold at a discount, because it means less people will show up to the games, and means that the product feels cheapened. It's why, when you look at it, Tex Schramm's reservations to NBC in 1976, with that Colts game I talked about in yesterday's video, make way more sense. On the other hand, so what? Fans are happy, and it's about the fans. You're getting the money from the ticket sales, you're getting way more exposure with a game on TV, you're getting good PR because the game's on TV, and that money you make on ticket sales and concessions from people who are now able to go to the game is more than what you would have made beforehand off of them, which was nothing. So I completely get both sides here, and it is an interesting debate and study and discussion to say the least. But back in 1973, not only did the Vikings completely fool the Cowboys, but so did a discount store. Because 17 wasn't just the number that the Vikings won by, but it also represented the percentage off that the discount store was selling tickets to this game at. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.